I thought this was like America's Got Talent. When does the show start? Judges? That would be much more fun than what we're doing right now. Well, I'm Johnny Akzam. I have lived in Minnesota since 1999. I, grew up in California and Missouri, kind of a weird mixture, and that wasn't my choice. Let's remember, we don't choose where we're born or where we're raised, but when I was old enough to know better, I made my home here in Minnesota. And it really stuck with me as far as policy and politics-wise when I was going to RCTC, and I was in the Student Senate, and I met a man named Paul Wellstone just prior to his unfortunate death. But after meeting him and then the disaster, and then we had the internet, you could read about him and his legacy, and I was like, this is exactly the kind of politics that we should have always been having. I've always had that bigger head, the strange kid in class that thought about society and how we could all be nice to each other. I just thought that there was a saying, and everybody sees it on all of my website and social media, never separate the life you live from the words you speak. And when I heard that, with other quotes and things that I get in my head, I examined it and said, that's the kind of life I want to live. If I say something, and sometimes I'll talk about something too much to hold myself accountable, because if I keep saying it, then I know somebody hears it, and then I have to be accountable to what I'm saying because I want to live my life that way. And I decided that if ever I got involved in politics, that was the kind of politician I wanted to be. And here we are, 2016, rocked the boat. And we understand that it's a dangerous climate when we throw our votes away for the decisions to be made up by other people, because we don't really know what their motives are all the time. And we got to be careful about that. So we wrap up our conversation and we move on to Vicki.
Great. Well, thank you for those introductory remarks. We, as Jen said, provided 2 questions to each of our candidates ahead of time, and those are listed in your program as well. We're going to go ahead and start with the first question. The first question is, given the deep partisan divide in Washington, D.C. and across our country, what will you do to bridge this gap and find common ground on the many tough issues facing Congress?
Well, I like to take a different approach. I think that we're moving to a time when we're actually dismantling the aisle. I'm part of a coalition of candidates across the United States that range from Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Greens, not a Libertarian yet, but maybe we'll get one. And they're all candidates that are doing well in their races, that are planning to win, they all support things like the federal jobs guarantee, which I'll talk about later. And we're already working with each other on the items that are going to address people's problems, right? That's what it's about. There should be no bending when it comes to human rights. If you don't want to bake a cake for somebody because of their sexual orientation, then you don't get to serve the public. That's all there is to it. There's no bending on that. You don't have to bend on that. You treat people with the same dignity, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what beliefs they have. And if you can't do that, then you're not a part of society. Go bake cakes in your church. And I think we have to start taking a stricter stand on people who treat other human beings disrespectfully. That's called bullying. And I used to get bullied, and I don't take it anymore. And that can be up in Washington, too. If there's people that don't want to come over to doing what's right, see, it's not about me being right. I'm not here to be right. I'm here to do right. And what that means in Congress is representing the best values of the people back here, not just some of the values or a few of the values, but we all have our bad days. Those are not the values I want to take up there, right? I want to take the days when you're the happiest and when you're the most joyful to reach out and help people and say, that's the person I want to, I'm going to take that up there and show everybody that's what we have back here. Because that's what affects the entire country. This isn't about Minnesota, this race. This is about the entire country. Our federal government has a responsibility to make sure that we have the resources that we need and that no rights are being violated.
All right. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our second question. I appreciate all your answers as we're beginning. And Mr. Akzam, we're going to keep mixing it up on either end. So we'll have you start with this question, and this is our second in our program. What are your top 1 to 2 priorities you believe need to be tackled at the federal congressional level that will have the greatest impact on your constituents here in Minnesota? And as time is available, what would you do to help address those priorities?
I've been waiting for this question. I've been doing this for the last 3 months. Instead of beating on the doors of the DFL, I've been studying the federal economic system and the federal jobs guarantee. And this is our 90% answer to socioeconomic issues in our society. Unfortunately, none of the other candidates know too much about it, I don't think, because it's a program that hasn't gained much traction among establishment Democrats and the mainstream. So you don't hear about it. So what the federal jobs guarantee is, because I had to do this yesterday for 1 minute over at the Stonewall, is it's federally funded, locally administered. And any problem that you have in your society, a panel like this comes together and says, let's create a community center to deal with youths not having anything to do after school. Well, we have the Boys and Girls Club. Yeah, but it's underfunded. And it's a private organization. It's too far deep. Let's do a community thing. We run it. The paychecks come straight from the government to the person, not to this panel, and they dole it out. I go into many, many details about it. But that's number 1, because that starts lifting people up immediately. And we don't have to worry about affordable housing if people can afford housing. And then the next thing that couples along with that, of course, is Medicare for All. And we already have H.R. 676, John Conyers' bill. Despite his shortcoming, he was still a decent legislator. And we're not sure who's going to pick that bill up. But if there's any provisions in it that we need to fix or that we can go further on, we can. But if you give people jobs and medical, the freedom to go and get medical assistance when they need it, then you've pretty much taken away 90% of the burden in each person's individual life. And then that carries over into what we can do in our communities. Anything you can think of. I know I get excited, don't I? Anything you can think of, this program can cover on a local level. It's not going to pay for the land or for the building materials, but once you have the land and the building materials, it will pay for the people to build the building.
Thank you. So that concludes our pre-planned questions. And we've gotten a number of questions from the audience, so we'll just start with one of them, and who are we starting with?
I think Mr. Wright.
Mr. Wright? Okay, so the first audience question is, what are your thoughts on gun control? Should this effort be led by the state laws or federal laws? I know Ms. Jensen alluded to this a little bit already in her opening, but yeah, let's start. Thank you.
Right, so all that plus, because all that is really, right on target. The one thing I'm proud of Minnesota is we already have stricter gun laws in this state than a lot. And we do have responsible gun owners. Nobody wants to take people's guns away. I was talking on social media about it, responsibility, your rights and your responsibilities. The Second Amendment was brought about for the Minutemen, the people. Not everybody was carrying a gun back then, but they were afforded the option to act as a militia in the respect to secure the state for the people. And that's kind of gotten warped over the centuries, and when we look at private ownership, most people, like around here in our rural areas, they hunt. There's a difference between a hunting rifle, a shotgun with a slug in it, and an AR-15. Anybody who says an AR-15 is a hunting rifle you get it. They're just making a red herring argument, a straw man argument to try to justify something that's ridiculous. The technology thing is big. We made the auto industry start putting in seatbelts, then airbags. Now they're going to be automatic brake systems. It's the next one. We're not too far on the whole self-driving thing yet, but you see where we enact regulations for the industry, but the NRA and the money, that is a part of it. But stop voting for people who always have the money, and you'll stop getting people who are influenced by money. Wait a minute. What? Yeah. Stop voting. Stop asking candidates, how much have you raised? Because that's not an indication of how well they can do up in Congress. Okay, all that is an indication of who's trying to influence them. Think about it. So if we want to get money out of the gun debate, then stop voting for people who are getting money from the gun legislators or from the gun lobbyists and all the other stuff they said.
Well, guess what? That was a perfect lead into our next question, so you'll just get to continue along with what you were just talking about.
Okay,
Because you're first.
which is the question.
Yes.
And the question is, submitted by the audience, Money in Campaigns is the title. What do you do about dark money, PACs, lobbyists, and Citizens United? Are we doomed?
No, as a matter of fact, I have my, you know there's an app for your Constitution, you put it on your phone. You don't have to carry the little book around. But Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution, I've been studying up on this because there's a way for Congress to strip that jurisdiction away from the Supreme Court, their ruling of Citizens United, because we know it's going to take about 10 years, if not longer, to get them to turn it over, unless we really take over everything in 2020, and it's just, you know, we have all this power, which we can't really rely on that, but immediately we can enact over their jurisdiction. Okay, still studying on that. Now, again, how do you get money out of politics? You stop supporting it. If you don't like a company, you boycott it, you stop buying their products. Well, if you don't like people that take big money, then don't support them. We know one of the candidates in this race who isn't here today got 90% of his money from another place that isn't here. That's my main target for the primary, is that's got to go, because that's exactly what we're talking about right here. Our campaign is, I mean, I wish the grassroots would grow a little bit, but you know, it's okay. I am more concerned about people. I don't want to have to tie a pork chop around my neck for the dog to play with me. So if I got to pay you to carry a message that we should all be carrying anyway, then how dedicated are you to the message? So we're attracting volunteers. We have non-paid staff, people who are concerned about our future, want to put time into it in their spare time. And we are showing people, I had a friend in Texas, Seema Hernandez, who ran for Senate against Beto O'Rourke in the primary and didn't have enough time. She ran on $4,000, got 246,000 votes in the state of Texas on $4,000. Tell me you need money. You don't. You need a message and you need people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we were going to give the candidates each a minute for a closing remark. We started a few minutes late, so what if, we're going to do this on the fly here, we're going to each give you 2 minutes for closing remarks, but we had a few questions that we weren't able to get to, so I'm just going to give you those topics generally. Some of you have already alluded to those, and so if you want to expound on those, you can choose to. Otherwise, you can use your 2 minutes as you wish. Specifically, the other question was, given the state of our healthcare system, what specific solutions will you offer? So if you choose to, that's something. And then the other, again, some of us, we've already talked a little bit, just about narrow special interest groups, controlling members of Congress, and how can we address that? Are you willing to make a pledge, or what would you do specifically? So we will go ahead and just ask for your closing comments. If you want to discuss those, you can. Something else, we defer to you.
Is that coming out of her about time?
I don't know, it didn't feel like 2 minutes to me. Went really fast.
Okay, so, you know, here's the most important thing. We didn't really talk about the economy and taxes, but we need quantum solutions in a quantum, or we have to stop using binary solutions in a quantum world. That's the saying that I use. And that means that we don't have this zeros and ones mentality anymore. As a web developer, I kind of use these analogies because young people understand them. But part of it has to do with the fact that, you know, we don't operate our federal government like we do our state and local governments. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. And if you don't understand that, you're going up to Washington and you're riding the same train that they've been lying to us about, saying that we can't spend on this. We just spent over $1 trillion in the military and we just cut taxes. Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, because it's not how it works. The federal government is the issuer of currency. They put money into the system so that the states and local governments have resources. They have an infinite supply. to put in. It's all political power and political will. And unless you understand that on a federal level, then you're just going to be wasting your time for 2 years. So when I talk about the federal jobs guarantee, we talk about Medicare for all, we talk about free college, we don't need to reinstitute programs from the 1930s. We need 21st century solution, rewrites. And we don't want to open up the Constitution to a convention at a time when we're so partisan. Let us get in there to where the partisanship has dropped, and all we're doing is looking at who the person is, who the candidate is, and what they stand for. Because there are people running in deep red states because they have to, but they're progressives who understand that we need all of these things to bring our society back. We need to stop letting the 1% hoard wealth and not circulate it into the economy, and we need to start investing in programs. This is all I need is a card because I want to talk to each of you personally, and there you go.
Great.